Hey everyone, welcome to episode 260 of 15 with Andy, Randy, and Jeff. This week it is just the Randy, and through no fault of my own, sort of. It was a little bit late notice when I contacted Adonna, and she said, hey, normally I would be happy to do it, but I have a physics final tomorrow, and I'm really going to need to study for that tonight, so we don't want to interrupt or move in the place of making sure she gets her time to study for finals. So we were not able to record with her this week. So I'm sorry we missed it because she had a great message this past week. If you tuned in online or you caught our sister podcast, Speaking of Grace, you already know that. Now, Adonna's, I believe, 18 years old, and she had some stories of change and transition from her life, beginning the first one from when she was 4 years old, and then one a little bit more recently. And I love the fact that someone that is younger than maybe a bunch of us that are listening, certainly decades younger than yours truly, but it just goes to show that as a community of believers, God has something for all of us to learn from each other. He has stories and experiences in these transitions that we've all gone through, even in a shorter lifespan than maybe others who've got a little more experience. But within those experiences, we find something that we can share with others and something that God's put on our hearts to tell others, that we can show what God has done for us in these different instances. And so, Adonna, I really, really enjoyed your message if you're listening, and sorry that we weren't able to connect this week. But she said something in her paragraph that went along with her message. And she said, in these tough transition periods, we can gain wisdom from those who've been through it before and take comfort from the fact that God's voice is a constant guide in our lives, telling us where to walk. And that's pretty awesome, because when we realize and then take comfort from the fact that we realize it's God's voice, that's the constant guide in our lives, telling us what to do, which way to go. And those were kind of one of the stories that she shared this week was, what am I going to do with my life? High school is over, college is at hand, and what's my career choice going to be? And even if you haven't gone to college, I think a lot of us can relate to those. Well, maybe we can still relate to those even if we're in our 40s or 50s, that we may still be wondering, what exactly is it that we're going to do with our lives? I think that's an ongoing sometimes for some of us. But anyway, I really enjoyed the message that she shared. She had a smile on her face. It was good to see somebody young, really young, bringing the message, and it was very thoughtful, and a lot of messages inside of that, even like I said, in that short lifespan that she's talking about, but really fun and a really great message. If you haven't had a chance to check out her message, I would encourage you to do so. You can do it on our website at WholeLife.Church, and you can find the sermons up on the right-hand side on the upper right-hand part of the page. You can listen to it and our sister podcast. Just swipe up in today's show notes and you'll find a link to Speaking of Grace, our podcast featuring each week's message that comes out every Tuesday evening about 8 o'clock. And do catch the message because I think you'll be blessed by it. And I wanted to go through, since we weren't able to really do a talking and a Q&A together, I wanted to go through she had 3 whole life takeaways that she had put together with the message. And the first one is, what are some of the things you were most scared of when faced with your latest transition? And there are so many transitions in life, so you can pick and choose which one you might be the most recent, or maybe one that you would consider a bigger transition or one that was more impactful. But, I think the things that maybe are most scary are just the unknowns. That's usually what it is for me, is my mind will immediately go to, but what about, what don't I know about this? What should I know? What do I think I know? And is there anyone else that might be able to help me, I don't know, work this out? Or maybe they've been through it before, or maybe they're just smart and they have some advice to give. Because to me, it's really the unknown. I try to have faith. I try to just trust in God that He's got it through prayer and through talking with my wife or other people, and just kind of giving it to God, but it's always really the unknown that you usually make out to be bigger demons, if you will, or bigger obstacles than usually what they turn out to be. Our mind can play a whole lot better theater of maybe just horror theater than what we really end up having to face. So for me, that's really the thing, is the unknown. The other one, second one, was what things has God placed in your past to help you prepare for your future transitions? And this one, I've spoken of it before, but being married younger and earlier in life and going through a whole bunch of things that you wouldn't ever plan for, you wouldn't say, oh man, I hope that happens to me. But through that process, you learn a lot about yourself. Hopefully, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about that other person. And you make decisions moving forward about people that I would never do that again, or I would at least never do that with a person that was like the person I'm now divorced from. But I think there's things in every situation that are in our past that we work through, you get through, and then there seems like there's always like a rebound or a recircling back to that in other instances, other transitions, other obstacles that come up in your life that you always have to, even involuntarily, you just have to go back there and you take those lessons and you realize, oh, right, now I totally get what was happening here. Or now I see why this happened, or I made this decision and that was the cause of this happening, or this was the end result. And now I can kind of see that more clearly. So for me, I mean, there's a ton of things. We all have those, but I think the key in that is it does prepare you for future transitions because you've been there before, you've trusted God, He brings you through. And if you can just remember that each time, that I need to pray about this, I need to be in the Bible, which is weird. I always thought that was a weird answer. People, oh, you got to be in the Bible. That really helps. I'm like, how does that help? What story in the Bible is going to just magically be the life lesson or the whatever I need to learn? How does that even work? And yet the more you do it, the more you realize that the things that you find that you would have never attributed to learning from that story is so dependent upon where you are in your life and what you're going through at that time, that it really does work. It really does correlate to what you're going through. And I believe that's just the power of God speaking to you through however He needs to. But being in His Word and praying and letting those just meditate in your mind. So many times I find these little correlations like, man, I would have never thought that, or I would have never picked that up from that story. I would have never put two and two together in this same way that I did, but I know it was because I was praying about it, and then I was reading about it, and then collectively there were the answers. And it's only God. That's the only answer, is God was listening. And even if I wasn't thinking it the proper way, or I wasn't thinking it through the proper way, He knows the desires of our heart, and the Holy Spirit brings them and comforts us and brings those answers. So I think that's really super, super important, is to take both of those and combine them into something that we do, that we rely on, that we make it a habit, and it begins to take shape as our go-to. And that can only mean good things for us. The last one was, who are the people in your life whom you can look to for guidance when you're going through times of change? And, that I guess is going to be different for everyone. Everyone's dynamic is different. Friendships, family, all your friends in whatever, categories. I have my really close friends. I have my friends that are kind of acquaintances. I have friends that are attached to work. I have friends that are attached, to church, different things. But who are the people that you can look to for guidance? So it's probably a small group, and hopefully it's a group that is willing to speak truth and willing to speak into your life without worry of what you'll think if it's not something that you totally want to hear. And hopefully it's someone that listens. Something that happens at our church regularly now is something called Stephen's Ministries. And my wife is a part of that. And I know from just seeing a change in her and the training that she's gone through and what I know about it from what she's told me and the way that we interact since she's been doing that. And part of it, well, a big part of it is just listening and being a good listener, not, and this sounds cliche, but not waiting to what you can answer with right away. Don't be thinking about that while they're talking to you. Just let yourself be in that moment. But honestly, the more she's done it, the more I've done it, and the more that I feel like, our communication has gotten so much better. And so just a key for that is hopefully you have someone that's, again, going to speak that truth, but also just going to allow you the space to totally put out there what you need to and just be a good listener, just be there, or just be silent in the room and just be there and be present. But I thought that overall, the way Adonna had presented her message was really good. It was fun. Like I said, she smiled, and it was a fun trip through her life and the different things and transitions that God has already put through to her and the people that he put in place. And so I just felt like that was a really important part of her message, was the people aspect and who God brought in. And when you're not expecting it, and from people that you're not expecting, maybe even people that you don't know that well, and God uses them in ways that you never would have possibly imagined, even if you're half tuned out. And so, again, I would encourage you to either go to our website, listen to the message on Speaking of Grace, and don't miss it, because she obviously put time and effort into this message, and it came through, and God blessed it. And it was really fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. All right. If you have any questions, anything on these takeaways that we just talked about, if anything just kind of hit a chord with you and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I went through this. I know what scares me most, and I know what God has placed in my past, or, I know who those people are. And if you have a unique story, kind of like Adonna did, I would love to hear those. You can send those through voice or text mail to 407-965-1607. As always, you can email to podcast@wholelife.church. And I want to remind you that every Saturday morning at 9:30, we have The Loop, which is an interactive live service that we are looking to engage with you in real time. You can watch on Facebook. You can watch on YouTube. You can go to wholelife.church/live. When you get there, or to any of those, log in if you're on the website to the chat roll. But, please, let us know who you are, where you're listening from, or viewing from, I should say, in the comments on those. If you log into the website and to the chat roll, we love to ask questions. There's icebreakers and things that we can all grow together with by sharing. We do prayer requests that you can share there as well, and also ask the pastor. Speaking of that, who is going to be speaking this week? And I have it here somewhere momentarily. Oh, that's right. This week is going to be David Banks. That's right. And his message is going to be on the title is Changing Belief in an Unchanging God. I wouldn't propose that I would know exactly where David is going to be going with that. I do know that he's usually the smartest man in the room. He's definitely the funniest man in the room. And I know he's got a real love for podcasts like I do. And usually when we see each other, a lot of times we have exchanged what's in your listening feed to find new shows. And so hopefully we will be able to catch up with him. So if you are local, of course, you can catch that message in person at WholeLife Church, 2800 North Orange Avenue in Orlando. Come by and stop in and worship with us, either at 9:30 for the Loop or at 11 for second service. Of course, you can always catch us online on Facebook at wholelife.church/live. You can watch the live stream. But we will be back next week with Speaking of Grace on Tuesday evening as normal. And episode 261, hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be reaching out to David Banks early, hopefully, that we can get together, and you don't want to miss it. So that's going to do it for this week. Thanks for listening, guys, and really have a great week and a great Memorial Day weekend.